It's the last OCG Fam show of the year, and we're talking about one-shot slurry test. It's gonna be fun. Let's get into it. Hey there, Bob Fergus, Constant Gardener. Welcome to the OCG Fam show to you, my YouTube buddies. What's going on? How's everybody doing out there? Let me know in the comments. Let me know what you're up to. Last show of the year. We made it. Made it through another one. Got another big year ahead of us, I think. Scott and I got some big plans for really putting out some good information next year and doing some little different things. And then, of course, we'll do a New Year's show next week with Scott. Couldn't do it this week, do a send-off show with Scott because he's with the snow and everything. He's up there in God's country, and it's a mess. So he couldn't make it, couldn't do it. But next week, we'll have the announcement on the big winners from people that bought during the Christmas sale, the stuff they're going to get for that. And talking about the new year, but dig into some meat stuff too. But the last show of this year, I think, is an important one. One-shot slurry tests. A lot more people are using one-shot because of new opportunities with LEDs. Also with the Circe Serum and Herculean Harvest combo. A lot more ability to push hard. And when you're pushing hard like that, you really build those plants up big and strong. They get a big appetite. It feels like you need a little backstop in there, something to have some nutrition in there for them if they run short because they're eating so much. So people have asked about when you're doing slurry test, how does one shot affect that? And Scott had a really good answer to that. We've answered it before, but I thought this was a particularly insightful and helpful clip. So I'd like you to watch the clip, and I'll talk to you after. It's from Red State Rebels. Thanks for asking the question. If I use one shot top dress, how do I get an accurate slurry test?
Go down 2 inches instead of 1, and it goes. You're still going to get that leach through no matter what. But one shot, as long as you're not scooping the one shot into your shot glass, crushing it all into a soluble powder, then adding the water, it's not going to show you its all availability. It's going to show you what's available because it's soaked. If you let it sit for 20 minutes, it's going to be higher than if you let it sit for 5 minutes because that's how long the water would take to go over it. So it's still referencing the same sense. It might be slightly elevated, but you have to just use it as a reference point that this slightly higher elevated parts per million are because you just pulled it from soil and added water to it to solubilize it. So, but
there's still that higher ppm is baked into the soil, though, right? I mean,
it's baked into this level.
Yeah,
that's the problem. So if you take your thing down here, whatever leaches through here, it's going to be there, but the plant is absorbing a lot of those parts per million. So you're not going to see, if you're at 250 one day, you add one shot, a week later you go do a slurry, it's not going to be 1,250 parts per million. It might be 450 or 500 parts per million, and it might hover in there because every time you water, it's slowly leaching that 400 to 500 into the root zone.
But I wouldn't react any differently to that 450 number than if that 450 number were genuine, would I? I mean, from some other source.
No, I mean, I think the bigger difference is that 450 all around, it might get stronger at the base because it's being pushed down further and further. I think some people might get even a little more elevated because they grab one shot in their slurry. I think the hardest part is getting it to where you're not grabbing one shot. So scrape off that top layer where you applied the one shot and then grab your slurry. But if you're grabbing just a top inch, you're grabbing actual fertilizer to slurry. If I take an ounce of one shot and add water to it, it's going to have a high ppm.
So I'm at 125, 150, 250. I'm good. And then I put this in, I'm at 450 the next week after the one shot. In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, this could be the one shot. I wouldn't try to flush that out of there. I would just go with the flow, and then a couple weeks later, I'm at 650. I'm like, oh shit, something is going on, irrespective of, let's flush this out. But if it's back to 250, it's like, okay, it's evening out. I'm getting some.
That's it. Watch the trend on that. If week 1 it's at 450, week 2 it's at 450, week 3 it's at 450, and you fed normally, then that's your new normal.
Okay.
If it goes 455, 575, 650 after 2 weeks, and the plants start looking like crap, okay. Something's wrong. Because usually if the plants are looking healthy and you have a consistent 400 to 500 parts per million for weeks, and everything's happy, there's your reference. If it gets worse looking and they go to 500, 600, 700, or the other way around, then it's like, okay, there's a correlation between the yellowing of this plant in the 750 parts per million that the soil now is. And now I have to figure out, okay, now why is it doing that? Is it the pH? No, pH is fine. All right, I must have just overfed too many times. I'm going to perform a flush, get my parts per million back down in that 4 range, and everything should just skip right back to normal.
Okay, what do you think of that? Informative, entertaining, helpful? Do you use One Shot? Do you use it by itself or as a backstop for a heavy feeding type grow or LED situation? Let's talk about that. Anything else you want to talk about? We got a big show coming up next week with Scott where we're going to be really digging into trying to take this to the next level. I guess that's it. Happy New Year. I love you. I'll see you next year. The OCG Fam Show. It's pretty good. It happens every day. It's the OCG Fam Show. See you next year. That one never gets old.